Nigerian chapter, Women in Safety Excellence, is having this webinar. And the topic for today's webinar is mental health disclosure in the workplace, its challenges and the supportive strategies. And the person that will be taking us through this webinar is no other person than our own beautiful Miss Bukinola Ayo. Over to you, Bukinola Ayo. You take over from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Cynthia. So I don't intend to take so much of our time because I know that some of us may be on the way from work and then some of us may still be rounding up with our work duties before leaving the office. So without much ado, let me just go straight to the profile of our speaker. Ifeoma Opara is a multidisciplinary, dynamic, competent, and dedicated HSE professional, researcher, and mental health coach. She possesses an advanced degree in public health, international diploma in health and safety, and in combination with other certifications, brings a wealth of knowledge and hands-on experience in every project. She's a certified member of IOSH, a member of American Society of Nutrition, ASN, American Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, International Institute of Security Professionals, Nigeria Red Cross Society, and Behaviors associated with mental health issues in the workplace. So I know that most of the time when we hear mental health, the first thing that comes to our head is colon mental. So as a GD, mental health is not just colon mental. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma.
Okay, so
yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
I think the network is bad from her end.
Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So before you come in, okay, my name is Bumi Bankole. I'm the chapter secretary, and then before you go on with your presentation, please crave your indulgence for everyone on this call. If your video is on, please turn it off. Apart from of course, the people that are anchoring this program, but for participants, please, let's turn off our camera. This will ensure that the bandwidth of the internet connectivity will not be affected, and to ensure seamless transition while you're doing your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, good. Thank God I can be heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
good evening. Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Great. Oh, great. You know, I'm used to more of physical presentation. So, but the fact that I can see some pictures like Dr. Cynthia's, at least I feel good that people are people are around. Oh, okay, that's good. So we'll go straight into the presentation, having spent close to 15 minutes waiting for our dear colleagues to join in. So again, my name is Mrs. Ifeoma Opara. I'm a mental health coach. And today we're going to be looking at mental health disclosure in the workplace, its challenges and supportive strategies. Now, the moderator got me laughing when she said everything about mental health is mental. Yes, that's the usual, that's what it would have been. But please, can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure, you can.
Okay. Are we, can anyone see the slide yet?
Yes, we can see the slide. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to be looking at mental health disclosure in the workplace, its challenges and supportive strategies. I'm trying to get into presentation mode. Okay. Okay, let's just go ahead. Well, so now, which path for mental health? Which path for mental health? Where are we headed? Now, when we look at the right side of the path, the right path, we're going to see darkness. We see something that looks close to gloom. And this is what is occasioned by stigma, discrimination, non-awareness, cultural dispositions that makes people not disclose their mental health issues. That's the path we were used to in the past. But now when we look at the left part of it, we're going to see a brighter side of life. That's where the awareness comes in, destigmatization, this awareness we are raising and all that comes with it. So do we choose the left or the right? And we can have reactions in the chat box. And then when you do that, I also want to know one or two of people or more that had one of their best meals today. If you know you had your best meal today, you know, some meals actually put you in a good mood. If you have your really good meal, some do put you in a good mood. So if you had your best meal today, can you put up in the chat box? Let's see those that had good meals, their best meals today. Anyone yet? Reactions. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. So now we're going to the brief session we're going to have now. We're going to look at exactly what mental health is. We're going to look at what disclosure is. We're going to look at the challenges and strategies. And all will be geared towards having a workplace culture that supports mental health disclosure. So now, what exactly is mental health? Now, mental health is a state of well-being that enables individuals to realize their full capabilities. And that includes learning to cope with the normal stress of life. I hope we know some stress is normal. In fact, I spoke with someone during the conference we had last, and he told me that he only operates well during his stress periods. He needs stress to operate well. So there are some stresses of life that are normal. So when you're able to cope with that normal stress of life, your mental health is on a good note. And also, people realize their abilities, they learn well, they cope well, and they contribute to their communities. This is World Health definition of mental health. Now, mental health prior to this time, once it's mentioned, like our sister, the moderator said, people just think about someone, some dysfunctional behavior somewhere, or somebody who is raving mad in the market, or somebody who is, walking around with torn clothes and all that. Oh no, that is not what mental health is. Each and every one of us, just like we have the physical health, we have the mental health. And the point we are at now is that point where we want everyone to be more aware of their mental health, more aware of the next person's mental health, more aware of what to do when there are fluctuations in their own mental health or that of other people. That's what strikes a balance, and that's what the basis of this discussion will be today. Now, Mental Health Day was on October 10th, and there was a lot of buzz everywhere. There were people talking, there were a lot of adverts, there were a whole lot of things out there, and I was impressed with them. I spoke to some companies I go to monitor things, and I found that most of them were more of things they say. I wanted to know things they did to their employees or with their employees as regarding mental health. And most of them were not able to give me a good answer or a concrete evidence of things done to protect the mental health of their people, or even encourage disclosure for people that have mental health issues. So it's quite a big deal. So this session will expose us to what the need for disclosure of mental health issues within the workplace. Now, World Health is giving us another figure. They are telling us that about a whopping 20% of Nigerians, that's about 40 million people, are affected by mental health illness. This is a huge number. It's even more than this. I remember when I talked to a lot of people, in fact, I go to do something else. Probably I'm going to do an inspection, and then I talk to people. At the word mental health, everybody, comes to life. Oh, ma, we need this. All of us are mentally affected. Of course, there's an economic downturn in Nigeria now. And this has brought about unemployment, hunger, poverty, and all these are impacting heavily on the people's mental health. I'm sure these figures are even higher now. Now, studies also show that Nigerians, for the most prevalent mental health issues are depression and anxiety. And I can't tell you how many people in depressive states I have spoken to in recent times. Sometimes you refer them to, in fact, I had somebody call me up last week or two, and I referred her somewhere. And I said, please, I think you need to go to so and so place and then have yourself see a therapist. And he goes on that, Madam, I've been to everywhere. I was housed in this mental home. I was this. And I looked and I said, so what exactly do you want? He said, I need somebody to talk to. I need somebody to open up to. I said, okay, fine, let's talk. And we spoke for over an hour. And he expressed a lot of concerns from his workplace to his home, no work-life balance, and a whole lot of things. So you see that depression is also on the rise. So these figures are not wrong at all. Now, apart from this, there are also some mental health conditions which are a little more, they are not as common as this ones, but they are there every time. There are people with bipolar issues, there are people with schizophrenia, there are people with post-traumatic stress disorders, and then the one that is beginning to gain grounds again is been there, but with the recent thing that is happening now, a lot of people use it as a vice, and that's substance misuse or substance abuse. So you find a lot of mental health issues coming up from substance abuse. Prevalent, no longer among, even teenagers are there, grown up. In fact, shockingly, this evening when I was speaking with a friend, I asked her to help me get me an electrician who will fix something for me. And she told me, she said, the people that were working with him, two of them, they were taking a lot of drugs, and now they have both gone mad. So you see that when we have these figures, they are not out of place at all. These are things that are really happening now. So now let's look at what mental health is and what mental health is not. Now, mental health, like I said, a lot of people are very intentional about their physical health. I see a lot of people go to the gym, do a lot of keto dieting, do a lot of exercise. In fact, a lot of people do skin tones. They do a lot of things for their physical body, very intentionally. Now, you keep wondering why we are not as intentional with our mental health. Now, our mental health is something we must be very intentional about. We must be very deliberate about it. That is part of the reason why we have these discussions on mental health. So it's something we need to look after. The way we look after our bodies, we should look after our mental health that way. What do we mean by that? There are a lot of things, even you yourself, even myself, know that impact on our mental health. We should know how to take care of them and not focus on them. Again, it's something everyone has. I'm sure as we are today, some people have had some forms of headache, fever, some people have aches, pains, and all that. And we view it as a natural thing because it's our physical body. Any mental health, we have a mental health, everybody does. I have a mental health, everybody does. And it's something worth making time for. It's something really worth making time for. The way you make time out for your exercises and all that, make time to do things that make you happy. For some people, it might be shopping. For some people, it's praying. For some people, it's taking a stroll. Anything that gives you that sense of relief is worth doing. Now, mental health can be positive and negative. What does that mean? I usually explain to people that there's a spectrum, or they're in stages. Now, at some point, you're flourishing. At that point, you're okay, you're doing very good. Everything is thriving around you, you're happy, your hormones are buzzing, everything is going well. Now, that could also fluctuate to a part where you begin to struggle. Something goes on and you begin to struggle. Now, if that's not properly handled at all, then you begin to progress to the next band, which is the illness or having to be off work. And most times we don't really want it to get there. Now, mental health is part of being human. It's part of being human. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that makes one weak. Talking about your mental health issue is not something anyone should, be afraid of. While going through, I was talking about mental health somewhere, and then someone flashed a picture. When I said it's not a sign of weakness, so someone flashed a picture in my face, and it was a picture of two birds, sitting together, standing together, and then one had its mouth closed and one had its mouth open. And he now said that he made reference to that which gender is this? So I started laughing. I said, it doesn't matter which gender it is, but once your mouth is open towards mental health issues, then you're sure you're on a good path. You're sure you're on the path of recovery. You're sure you're on a path that you can overcome anything you're feeling easily. So these are things that mental health is or is not. Now let's look at some of the factors that could affect mental health. Now, all these factors put together here, these individual factors, environmental factors, organizational factors, most of what they are psychosocial hazards. Now, what do these psychosocial hazards do? Psychosocial hazards are those hazards that affect your mental health. And they do so by causing stress. That's why we can't discuss mental health without stress. Stress is a major form of the things that cause mental health. Now, when we look at the organizational factors, we have the work demands. A lot of people work overtime just to make ends meet, especially in this economic situation. And apart from that, organizations even make people work more than they should do. Now, those demands, when they begin to get out of hand, stress begins to set in. Then we have low control. I usually tell organizations when I go for inspections, when I go for any safety activity, please involve your workers. Worker involvement is paramount. Better. It's less stressful for them. So I encourage employers to always make sure that they do include their workers in decision taking. Now, poor support, lack of role clarity. I mentioned this one some time ago, and it looks so funny to people. A lot of Gen Zs can't deal with lack of role clarity. They want you to tell them exactly what to do. And if that doesn't happen, they become very stressed at work and leads to what? Mental health issue. Now, poorly managed relationships. When you have the bullying, when you have the sexual harassment, when you have all what that goes on in the workplace, they all affect the people's mental health. Now, not only that, I remember I had a colleague at some point. Now, this colleague walks into the office in the morning, and then I greet her. Good morning. First thing she says is, I hear say 20 kidnappers don't enter Abuja. And I'm like, oh my God. Then the next minute, 2 minutes later, she calls me again. If you don't hear, I hear say they behead 2 people for Kubwa, and I'm beginning to get stressed. My heart is beginning to, I'm beginning to get worried. The next minute again, she calls me, Ify, hey, I hear say Thunder killed 20 people and I'm like, oh my God. So what I did was to quietly look for a way to change that office, because those information alone was really impacting on my mental health. So there are a lot of ways they could come in the workplace. It doesn't only come by bullying, there are a lot of ways they could come, but any way they come, it is important we know how to handle them. Then poorly managed change. Now, one of the things we fear most, one of the things individuals, humans fear most is change. And when that change occurs and it's not properly handled, then we're in for mental health, mental stress already, or mental health issue. Now, low recognition and awards. I'm stressing on organizational factors because we're talking about workplace. So I'm talking about those ones inherent in the workplace. And let me not fail to mention something. When we say mental health at work, people usually will think, oh, it is the work that causes the mental health all the time. No, mental health at work simply means the mental well-being that is brought into the work environment and is experienced there. Most of us spend our waking hours and most of our productive days in the office. So whether it's internal or external, wherever the pressures are coming from, they are experienced at work. So when there is an improvement of workplace culture, when there's inclusiveness, when there's support, when there's a positive setting, then people are able to overcome more easily. Now, low recognition and rewards, it's one that a lot of people don't look into, but it's a major deal. It's a major deal. When you study the theory of motivation, you understand how this impacts on the employees and their productivity. Now we have the environmental factors, we have individual factors, whether they're physiological, we have the previous experiences. Now, mental health affects people differently. That's what we need to understand. What causes somebody, Mr. A mental health stress or mental health issue might not be the same thing that will cause Mr. B a mental health issue. And people have different coping styles. Like I remember there was a point 2 years ago, I lost my friends, 2 of my friends, very good friends, lost their husbands. Now, the first person could cry. She was always crying. And when she starts crying, people tell her, oh no, stop crying, don't cry. And I tell them, please let her cry. Crying is very therapeutic. Why? There are a lot of hormones, the oxytocin and endorphins, they are all released during crying. And what do? They numb pain. They make you feel good. So sometimes you find crying to be very therapeutic, especially when there is a psychological pain. So people cope differently. And don't forget, these things will happen in the workplace, because I remember that my friend going to work sometimes and she'll cry all day. She has to be sent back. She was given compassionate leave on a number of times, and then she couldn't get through. She had to quit the job. Mental health issues. So these are some of the factors that affect mental health. Now, let's also go to, now, what are the signs and symptoms you're going to see? Am I still being heard? Am I heard? Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
We are hearing you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So now, these are some of the signs of common. Now, these are some of the signs of common mental. Somebody's mic is on and it's causing echo. So these are some of the signs of common mental health problems. Now, remember I said earlier that there's a spectrum. So people move from flourishing or thriving to where they struggle and when they are off work. Now, this could also mean they are still having mental health issues. Now, it could progress over time, if not properly handled, until it fully blossoms to mental health illness. That's when they begin to have the sedatives, they begin to go to mental health homes, they begin to go to, the doctors and all that. So these are some of the signs of common mental health problems. You see low mood or sadness, then feeling isolated and feeling disconnected. These are not one-off things. Somebody could just be sad for a day and the person goes to one corner and sits down. Please, the person doesn't have mental health issue. Now, these things, they have a trend. When they occur over time, that's when we begin to look out and say, okay, this person has gone down with mental health issues, and then we begin to bring in interventions for them. So low mood, sadness, feeling isolated and all that. Now, I told the story of the young man who was always isolated in his workplace and nobody paid attention to him. He was, for a very long time, he was isolated, always on his own. He would do his job and all that. It took him to become violent in the workplace for people to realize that he actually had a mental health issue. And by that time, it was very late. He had blossomed. And to make matters worse, he was bundled from the workplace to the church, to the prayer house. Let me not mention any denomination, sorry about that. He was bundled to a prayer house, and then he was left there for some time until he could pick up himself. So low self-esteem, low self-confidence, burnout, stress, anxiety. Anxiety, when it goes over time, is a serious mental health issue. I remember years back, I used to worry to a chronic level. I don't know what was wrong with me, honestly, but I used to be, if English permits me, a chronic worrier. I worry about every and anything. In fact, I could worry about walking and, hitting my foot somewhere. I could worry about not breathing well when I sleep. Just worry over anything. Then one day I came across a book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And then I just got up from my chair in the office. I went to the shop, I looked for it, and I got it. And I started reading it. Now, by the second day, I started worrying if the things I was reading in the book was going to work. So I found that at that point it was becoming more, and I had to advise myself. I had to speak to myself that you have to come off this. So only by speaking to myself that I went off that anxiety stage. So anytime we find ourselves becoming too anxious, we should not allow that to stretch, or any of our employees becoming, showing the signs of anxiety. We should try to nip in the bud. Now, this is the one that blossoms really quick, difficulty sleeping. Now, once there are mental health issues, one of the first things it affects is your sleep. One of the very first things it affects is your sleep. And once it starts affecting your sleep, then the trouble is beginning to grow. The seed is beginning to germinate. Why do I say so? Mental health and physical health are very closely related. Once mental health begins to elongate, then physical health problems begin to set in. What do I mean? When people become sleepless, when sleepless nights abound, what happens is that before you know it, frequent headaches begin to set in. High blood pressure begins to get high. And then when the pressure begins to get high, ripple effect, cardiovascular sets in, hepatic sets in, nephrology sets in, everything sets in until organs begin to shut down. So one of the signs we really look out for when people complain of mental health problems is insomnia, so that it doesn't blossom into full mental health and physical, breakdown. Now, irritability and anger. These are also some signs of common health. Right now, as it is in Nigeria, I tell a lot of people, when you're walking, please walk for yourself and the next person. Because if you step on someone's foot, sometimes the person could get so violent. Sometimes when I'm driving, I see the way when somebody, goes off and then goes in front of the next person, you see the way the other person speeds up, so there's anger everywhere. But now, anger ordinarily is not a sign of a mental health problem. It's when, again, it is continuous or over time. And then we have difficulty staying focused and concentrating. These are all signs of common mental health problems that should not be ignored in the workplace. So if we have our stress risk assessments, if we have our proactive stress management systems ready, we're able to point out these things when they start happening. And then we begin to give assisted programs to those people, assistance to those people who are affected, so that they flourish in the workplace. So now we're going to go straight to see what mental health disclosure is and its attending challenges. Remember, this is the basis of this session. But again, we can't talk about mental health disclosure when we don't have a good knowledge of what mental health is and what to look out for. Now, I was looking through something yesterday, and somebody sent something to me that I was counseling on something, and I said, always try to have a problem shared is half solved. And then he said something to me. He sent a message to me. He said, some shoulders are not shoulders to lean on, but public address systems. What does he mean? He means that it's not everybody that you can talk to. And that's because some people who you are supposed to talk to should be trained. Now, what is mental health disclosure? Mental health disclosure in the workplace is like a double-edged sword. It's like a double-edged sword. What do I mean? It has its attending challenges and it has its good opportunities. So handling it is very delicate. But once you're able to strike a balance, then we are good to go on workplace mental health disclosure. Now, the culture of the workplace, on the other hand, plays a very significant role in shaping employees' willingness to disclose. I remember having to go, I went to an organization one morning and I met a lady having a seizure. She was also, people were screaming and running around. So I came to where she was. Being a trained first aider, I put her in the recovery position and I watched her, after the fit, she got calm. And then when she looked up, she had this, oh my God, did this thing have to happen here? She had it on her face. And then I tried to talk to her. So she held me really tight and then we walked out somewhere. So the head of the organization had been told that something had happened in the branch. So she was looking to have a report. So she held me closely and we walked close to where the head of department was. And she stood at one side. So I asked her, I got to ask her, I got deeper with her. I was asking her, what does she think the problem is and all that. So she opened up to me and told me she had a problem with her, her daughter's father. And anytime she has such issues and she screams and all that, because she's had a childhood trauma before then. So she started having seizures. So when she has that level of anger in her, it triggers that seizure. So that morning she had that same argument and it was so bad. So she said she felt it coming, but that she had been out of work for a long time. So she didn't want to stay out of work that particular day. So I said, okay, after talking, I said, okay, I'm going to talk to our branch, your branch head, and then we'll know how we're going to accommodate you so that you don't have to, deal with stigma and all that. So we went to I left her in a space and I went to see the head of the branch. And then when I went to her, she was discussing with some people and I told her, please, I needed to see her privately. So she said, hi, Shidwe, what was wrong? I said, ma'am, we need to talk about this, like on another note, because I think it's something that will reoccur. She immediately turned to the other people she was discussing with. And from a distance, she said, they say it will be reoccurring. They say it will be. So I was like, what's going on here? Oh, maybe this is why this lady really doesn't want to share her problem in the workplace. Everybody really doesn't have to know what's going on with her. And I told the woman, please, we'll have this discussion later. She said, okay, so I left. So later I came back and I coached her on how to get a team and all that to prepare herself ready and get the workplace ready for people to be able to disclose. And then, of course, we handled the lady and then she's doing really well now. So mental health disclosure is something that should be taken in a very careful way so that you do not end up causing more harmony within the workplace. Now, this mental health disclosure refers to the process by which an employee informs their employer or colleagues about a mental health condition. Like I said earlier, while this can really foster support, it can also present several challenges. So now let's look at some of the challenges that disclosure can bring within the workplace. First and very importantly, the stigma. Stigma is that process of labeling, stereotyping, and separating people into you and us. Previously you could see like when people had seizures, let me talk about not all seizures, let me talk about epilepsy properly. When you see people having that epileptic seizure, everybody disappears. Because I also know a workplace where there's somebody who has this epilepsy. Everybody disappears. And then they tell you the saliva, when the saliva touches you, you go down with it, this, that. So the person is stigmatized. I had to go in severally to talk to a particular organization that this thing is not transferable. It's not something you get from saliva. So all you need to do is to make sure that he's out of harm's way when he has the seizures, and then he goes back to work. And it took a lot of intervention before the stigma in that area could reduce to the barest minimum. So this is one of the primary and a very major obstacle to disclosure in the workplace. A lot of people fear that when they disclose their illnesses, they'll be labeled as weak, or it can also harm their professional reputation. Yes. And it does. I've seen it happen in workplaces. So that's why this this topic we are taking is a very important one. We should learn to destigmatize. Let that destigmatization awareness be everywhere. It's important we know the causes of some things, and then some things you hold them down so that people are not. Stigma is one of the things that brings, in fact, it brings the worst of mental health issues. Because from that stigma you give them, they now go to self-stigma, where they begin to judge themselves. And that's the more dangerous ones. From that self-stigma, that's where you begin to have them having suicidal thoughts. When I had interaction with people that have tried committing suicide before, I found out that stigma was one of the major reasons they tried to commit that suicide. So this is a major challenge, and it has to be handled very, very delicately when workplace disclosure is being discussed. Now, the next one is job security concerns. A lot of people are laid off their jobs once they disclose that they have a mental health issue, and I don't think that's right. I have had a lot of interaction with people when it has to do with mental health. Most of them, they don't have mental illness. What I mean by that, they have not gone to that level of violence or, tearing people apart, or, that's mainly what people fear. They don't get to that. Most of them just need somebody to talk to. Now, I keep telling people, most of what therapists do, 80% or 90% of it is talk to the people. Is when the case is very serious, that's when sedatives are used. And what the sedative does is to numb the pain and make the person sleep for a while. Funny enough, most times when the person wakes up again, the problem still stares the person in the face. So you have that constant talking to, constant support, assistance. That's what brings people easily out of mental health issues, and not, stigmatization. So a lot of people are afraid that when they do open up, oh, this is the mental health issue I have. Oh, I have depression. I have anxieties. I have bipolar. Oh, my this. In fact, people even fear to mention that their sisters or their brothers have, mental health issues, because somehow, culture has made us believe. Although yes, there's scientific backup to genetic predisposition, but that does not mean that if there are no combination of factors that the person will get down. No. So job security concerns are very, very important on the minds of people when you talk about disclosure. They fear termination, they fear demotion, they fear reduced opportunities, they fear that they will not advance, they fear referring to their illnesses. There are some people that when any slight mistake they make, or they make a mistake on the memo, they say, it's because he's not okay, it's because he's mad, it's because he's mentally ill. So constant inference on those illnesses make a lot of people don't want to open up. So when the workplace culture supports people opening up by doing the right things, people are not afraid of their jobs again, whether they're going to lose them or not. I've seen a lot of people lose their jobs, and then we're trying to make more people not to lose their jobs when they disclose their mental health status. Now, job confidentiality or privacy concerns. Like somebody told me yesterday, I was telling him, I was trying to encourage him. I said, look for a shoulder to lean on. And he boldly told me that not every shoulder is one to lean on, that some are public address systems. What does that mean? Somebody tells or discloses that he has this, and by the time he comes to work the next day, the whole office has his information in their hand. Nobody is going to disclose again. So this is one of the major challenges. How do you groom your people? Sometimes I go to some places, I sit down, or I sit in my office, and then one of my friends told me one day, she said, Madam, I wonder, sometimes I want to go into your head and see how your head is, because of the amount of secrets you're keeping in there, So they keeping people's, it's in fact, in saner climes, even in the medical field, you'll be fined, and probably you have a lot of things to deal with if you tell people, if you disclose, people's private medical information. I don't think it's right. So disclosure of this means they share things that are very personal with you, and is expected to stay with you or stay with your team, or if your HR is trained, or they are trained people in HR, because accommodations and other things that are done to handle people are domiciled in the human resources department. So sometimes we need to have people there that know about mental health and are trained on confidentiality. So this will also help people to be able to disclose more. Now, lack of support and understanding. There are some workplaces, they disclose that, okay, I have this. And then you see people treating that mental health issue they have disclosed with laxity. They treat it with laxity, or they overreact, and then the people from that overreaction, stigma comes in, job loss comes in, and a lot of that. So people fear that they will not be supported or they will not be understood when they disclose that they have mental health issues. So these are the main challenges that come with workplace disclosure. Now, let's look at some of these supportive strategies. What are the things that can be done from every angle to ensure that these challenges are reduced to the barest minimum? Let's look at some of them. First, we're going to look at the government actions because they are the first and the foremost. They are the lawmakers. It really lies with them to do a lot of things. Now, first, we talk about the laws. The laws. Now, I keep asking, are there laws? Are there laws when it comes to mental health? Yes, there are laws. The laws dated back to 1918. That's when we had the first Lunacy Ordinance. That's what they called it then, which in 1958, it progressed to Lunacy Act. And that one was kind of, even when I still read about it, it's a bit scary because what it does, it gave legal practitioners and medical practitioners the power to detain people who have come out to say, oh, we have mental health issues. Now, in 1991, again, there was the first mental health policy was developed. That one was centered around prevention, promotion, advocacy, treatment, and rehabilitation. Now, again, in 2021, the Real Mental Health Act, another one was set up to repeal the Lunacy Act. And in 2023, in January, it was signed into law. Now, is that Mental Health Act adequate? In my own view, yes. Why? Because when you go through the sections, for example, you go through section 13, I think, you see where it talks about your employment rights of people who have mental health issues. 19 talks about privacy and dignity. Section 21 talks about right to confidentiality. They have right to legal action, they have legal rights. They have all of that. But where I really find the problem is the section 6, where there's where they have to come up with a mental health fund where people are referred to. Implementation remains a major challenge for us. Implementation remains a major challenge. So we have an act that is quite adequate to handle mental health issues within the country, but then implementation is nowhere to be found. So we keep talking to the government, we're pleading that lawmakers look into it, because imagine having mental health funds at every nook and cranny, or having them in primary health centers or tertiary health centers where people can walk in and boldly tell themselves, or disclose that they have these issues, or where organizations can refer people to whom they have known that they cannot handle within the workplace. Now, apart from the Mental Health Act, is there another act? Yes, there's the Employee Compensation Act. The section 8 of it talks of mental stress, compensation for mental stress. That means they acknowledge that mental stress can arise from the workplace. But now there is still a bit of challenge. There are conditions. It has to be from a non-traumatic injury. It has to be ascertained by medical board of inquiry, and a lot of investigation has to be done. Now, remember, we say there are internal and there are external factors that, that mental health at work is that well-being that you bring in to work and you experience. So how can we really, discern? The investigation is where the problem is, and then the medical board of inquiry in dealing with compensation for mental stress. Of course, that's stress that is, mental stress acquired as a result of the work you do. Of course, the Factory Act that we use that is almost obsolete made no reference to, mental activities. So now what else can government authorities do? Cultural influence. They have a lot of influence. Carry the awareness to the grassroots. Our lawmakers carry to the grassroots, because honestly, at the grassroots level, we have a lot of culture. Like I usually, I don't watch a lot of films, but this clip got my attention, so I can't even I can't stop talking about it. Where a daughter came in and met her dear Pete Edochie, and then she told him, I want to get married to Obinna. And he says, who is Obinna? The son of Mazi the Hunter. He said, yes. He said, no, you can't marry. Madness runs in their family. So you can imagine this level of, cultural disposition. Even someone like this won't be able to go to the workplace and talk about, the kind of any mental health issue being experienced. So when awareness is carried into the grassroots, they'll be told more about what they can do to, handle mental health issues at work. Then primary healthcare. Primary healthcare is, we have a problem already because there's a dearth of medical. When I mean dearth, I don't mean death, I mean dearth. There's a great reduction. The proportion of one psychologist or psychiatrist to one Nigerian is very low. We have about 300 of them on the average now. And I'm sure many of them have also left the country. Now, apart from the hazards that accrue to their jobs, they are not, every primary healthcare facility does not have a psychologist or psychiatrist to deal with people. Even if these things are implemented, we need the health workers to carry out the implementation. Like, this is another funny one I had. When I was doing research for this program, I went to a psychiatry department in one of our tertiary establishment, healthcare centers. And then I was going in boldly, like the Gen Zs would say, with my steez and composure, it's very demure, just walking into the place. And I saw a lot of people rushing out of the place. And I was still walking with my heels, feeling good. And on getting to the door, I saw somebody approaching me very seriously. And they were like, patient is reacting, patient is reacting. I just left my steez and composure on that door and I took off. So I got home, I started thinking, oh, maybe this is why a lot of people don't want to practice this profession, because the hazards in it is also overwhelming. So the government needs to also help, and then put a lot of motivation and a lot of things to help these primary healthcare workers to remain in their healthcare facilities. Then task sharing. In the absence of these workers, what we can do is to get mental health people who, people who studied in these environmental colleges or environmental colleges who have a bit of mental health knowledge. Then they are supervised by the real mental health people. They teach them how to, at least to recognize, to manage mental health issues. When this is done, the number will greatly increase. And then, of course, the human resources, we are still pleading with the government and the policymakers to make enough human, financial resources, material resources, and all that to enable mental health facilities to function to top at their top. Now, that's for government. Now, employers, what are we looking out for? Employers, first and foremost, please develop a mental health plan and develop mental health policies to guide the workplace. Like most of safety professionals here, about the ISO 45001, the audit for this. ISO 45003 is the international standard for managing psychosocial risks. It complements the ISO 45001. So this should work hand in hand so that psychosocial risks within the workplace are greatly handled. Now, when you do that, you also promote flexible schedules, provide support. Employee assistance program cannot be underevaluated, cannot be underspoken of. Why? When people have issues and they get the level of support they want from the workplace, remember we're talking about workplace culture. So a lot of burden, a lot is placed on these employers. They do what they do, the government does their part, but most of the bulk of it lies on the employers, who are the direct people that come, who are the ones that come in direct contact with these employees who have mental health issues. Now, there should be a well-being leave. A lot of people have accidents, there's follow-up, they follow up on them. How are you doing? Is your leg healed, the fracture? But people go on leaves for depression or depressive episodes, and nobody really, when they come back, nobody follows up on them to know how they are doing, the root cause of the issue, has it been solved, and then how they are going to be managed going forward. And then promoting a healthy work-life balance, fostering a culture of open communication. People can only talk to you when they trust you. If people don't trust you, if they know that their information is going to be everywhere in the workplace, they're not going to talk to you. So it's very important that this culture of open communication is fostered among the people. Very, very important. Now, also conduct a risk assessment. Check the employers, your sick leaves, return to work forms, check all that. Then the exit interviews, all these things are pointers to the stress people face within the work and mental health issues. When you look at all this, I can assure you your workplace will be, the culture will be one that supports disclosure. There is so much more we can do as employers when it comes to implementation. This is just theoretical knowledge. There's so much more that can be done to build a culture that supports workplace disclosure. Now, when we are done with employers, we are going to talk to the employees themselves. They have their own duties as well. When you open up, that's when you can have access to accommodations. You know, when there's this auntie of mine, she would always tell you, I can't break into your head to know the problem you have, so I can't help you. So that's the same thing. If you don't open up, if you don't talk to somebody, then you can't really be helped. I remember 2 days ago, like I said, I had a problem. It came to me, it hit me hard because I got a phone call and then I had to deal with that issue. But I tossed and toiled all night to find a solution. I didn't find, and I spoke to myself, you're a coach, you know what to do. So the next morning I called someone, I said, come, this is what is happening. What do I do? What do we do? I say, let's put a call and then let's see how this is sorted out. And I put a call and then the whole issue was sorted out and I'm so at peace. So sometimes when you open up, it can really lead to a whole lot of help. A problem half shared is really half solved. Please don't worry when somebody tells you that a shoulder to lean on is a public address system. Please, not all are public address systems. Some can really, really help you get out of your problem. It's really important we share. Look for a close confidant, look for somebody you can talk to and talk. Talking is therapeutic. Talking can help you once you onboarding yourself. That's why sometimes you feel so heavy. And then when you say something out, you feel lighter. So talking can really, really help improve your mental health and then improve your access to certain accommodations. Now, increase trust. When they get supportive responses, like when I talk to a lot of people, they come back to tell me, oh, my friend came to me and then she's better now. Please, I want you to help me. So when people trust you, when people can trust the system, when people can trust the employers, believe me, they are going to do all they can to make sure that their mental health issue is solved. So now let's just look at diagrams of unsupported worker and supported worker, and then we see how it looks like. So for an unsupported worker, what you get is an employee becoming unwell. Of course, feels burnout, feels stressed, feels everything. And the next stage is the person is not even safe to talk. The person doesn't want to talk to anybody. Now, down the line, like I said, the spectrum is building. Ad hoc time off. The person is taking time off now and then. And of course, his performance or her performance drops. Then at some point, because they'll have to go to doctors, no matter how long they stay, they get to a point. You know, someone told me something 2 days ago. Her mom was so ill. She said, you know, they went to the hospital, they did a lot, and the doctor said, just carry her home and pray. So when the doctor signs off, is that just carry home and pray thing? So at that point, the person is left, you know, to fate. At this point, the person is taken a lot of pills and definitely must be disengaged from work. Now, at this long-term leave or long-term sick, what happens? The person enters into expensive mess. In fact, it gets messier by the day. So the person has nowhere to go from there. Now, this is a bit different from a supported worker. Now, this worker begins to feel unwell. Now he has a safe space to speak. There's somebody to listen to him. Then the manager engages. You know, when your manager, like when I'm talking to people about safety, yesterday we had a long discussion on a chat about policy development and all that. And I told them the bedrock, the basis of all this is management commitment. So once your manager, somebody who is ahead of you, someone you look up to, gives you a support, you're already on your way to healing. Now, what happens? Adjustments come in for the person. The counselor begins to give, so then support comes. Over time, instead of the spectrum to build to the negative, it begins to come back to the positive side. Performance now improves and the employee stays. The team is good and then recovery is quickest. So let's just take a quick, I need people to respond in the chat so that I know people are listening to me. In organizations, where do you think we find stress the most? Do we find stress most at the top? Do we find it most at the middle? Do we find it most at the bottom? So tell me, give me at the chat room, please, let it flow. Do we find it at the top, at the middle, or bottom? Okay. Where do we find stress? Is it at the management level? Is it at that middle level? Is it bottom level? Okay, good. Good responses, good responses. I would have loved to, maybe at the end of this, I would like to hear from one or two people why you think so. Okay, great. So now let's look at our take-home message. What are we taking home from here? Now, we are taking home that the most prevalent reason, one of the strongest reasons why people do not disclose their mental health problems is that they are afraid it will affect their career. And then we now know that your supervisors, that is those at the head, and your co-workers are the two groups of people who critically contribute to mental health in the workplace. Believe me, if these two people are supportive and they know they carry along very well, the workplace culture is set already for positivity. So this set of people are the ones that critically contribute to mental health in the workplace. Now, I boldly want to tell you that a significant proportion of workers have mental health disorders. I'm not saying illness, that they're not raving mad, but they have significant, they have mental health disorders. So they're either struggling at work or returning from a disability leave. Now, support of this set of workers could benefit the workplace maximally and reduce productivity loss. Now, organizations need to take more proactive approach. I've mentioned some of them here. Your stress risk assessment, use the ISO 45003 to do your audits and risk assessment so that you can handle all psychosocial risk. Is a big deal now, so that should be handled. And then when that is happened proactively, you see, most times I go to organizations, they tell me, oh yes, we have mental health first aid, we have counseling. Those are all reactive. Now, the people have already come down with those disorders and you're looking to correct them. But when you take a more proactive approach by building and maintaining, doing these things I mentioned earlier, of course, you have built and maintained a positive and supportive workplace. Now, when you make disclosure safe, stigma and the burden of mental health disorder can be very, very significantly reduced. When you make disclosure safe within your workplace, stigma and the burden of mental disorders will be significant. I'm talking from experience. I have been able to do a lot of that in workplaces and I got a lot of good results. So in conclusion, I want to just tell us a little story about this goes to, us individually, as employers, as employees. There were two sheep that were in two different cages, but two different cages at two different places, same environmental conditions. They were given the same food, they were treated the same way. Now, what happened? After a while, they had the same, weight, they had same everything. After a while, the picture of a lion was put in front of the cage of one of the sheep. And then nature, the other sheep was exposed to nature, natural picture, the greens and all that. After some months down the line, they were still having the same conditions, environmental and feeding. The one who faced the lion significantly started to drop in weight, while the other one maintained and even improved in weight. Now, after a while, the one who faced the lion could no longer even stand. Now, what does that tell us? Focus more on the positive side of life. Even within the workplace, whatever we face, it's always better when we focus on our problems, we shift our gaze and we begin to go down like that sheep who faces the lion. But when we face the brighter side of life, the greens, we begin to flourish and our mental health remains more stable than ever. So on a final note, let's heal our workplaces. Let us heal our workplaces and make them a healthier space. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that enlightening session. I learned a lot, and I guess every other person learned a lot from the presentation. So because of time, we will only be able to take 3 questions. And I saw a question in the chat box from someone, just a minute, from Frank E.B., if I'm not mistaken. And his question, okay. His said, will a mental, someone that is that has a mental issue be conscious to notice his or her colleagues and employer? That someone that has a mental problem, will the person be able to notice the colleagues and the employer?
If somebody has a mental health issue, will the person be able to notice?
Yes, the colleagues and.
I would like this person, is a person on the call, I would like the person to unmute so that I get the question right, so that I don't answer wrongly. Because if I'm looking at it from the side of, will the person be able to notice, are we looking that the person has moved to the end of the spectrum where the person is really down? Or are we looking at the fact that he may not, is it on the part of looking out for the employees, the other employees, or I don't know the angle the person is coming from. Can the person unmute and then ask the question, please? Is it possible?
Frank EB, are you there? Frank EB, if you're there, you could just unmute and ask your question.
Okay, if he's not able to unmute, I just want to say that, one, it depends on the spectrum you find yourself. Some people actually do know when they are, people who have gotten the right counsel actually do know when they are going down. So if it's about looking out for your employees or their own mental health, then it depends on where you are also on the spectrum before you're able to look out for other people. Now, when some of those signs of mental health illnesses actually cloud your real sense of reasoning. So at that point, you may even be irrational to some of your colleagues if you're the one to look out for them. But if, on the other hand, he's talking about maybe people who are thriving, who are flourishing in their mental health, looking out for people who have mental health issues, then that way it's easier to solve. But when we have a workplace culture, when we have these awareness sessions, when we have these trainings going on, it's not aimed at only those who have mental health issues or aimed at when the person is down. It is aimed at everybody. So everybody is able to recognize things within themselves. That's what makes it a workplace culture. It's just like going to the north and then dressing like a northerner. You're not going to struggle because there's a culture there. So if everybody in the workplace has the same knowledge about mental health issues, then it will be more easier to look out for each other. I hope it answers that, unless there's something else he wants to add.
Okay, we have another question from Gote Nidambo. He said, informative. How do you incorporate this into an organization that does not have this process in place?
This thing is not a day's thing, and again, it's not rocket science. Now, these are things you go gradually to. When you visit an organization, if there's or you're working in an organization, then if you're working, you're lucky enough to have realized that gap. But if you're not working there, then when you go in and you have the first two discussions with them, honestly, you are going to begin to see where gaps exist. Then now there are different things. If you're going into an organization that has a system in place, then it's easier for you. If you're going to a system that doesn't, an organization that doesn't have a system in place, then you have a lot more work to do. You have to bring in your awareness, you create the awareness yourself, you ask to speak with the management, you educate them on one or two things, you do some form of posters, you do your campaigns, you give them your, talk to them about your case studies, you give them examples of things. And by the time you've done that, I'm talking from experience because I've been to organizations that do not have anything that have to do with mental health. And by the time we're done discussing, they had bought into the idea of, having even awareness trainings and then having teams that could look into, look out for their staff on different areas. Some of them, like there's a particular organization, they had people working alone, like lone workers. Most of those lone workers were always out of job because they had one thing or the other. It was communication that made them to realize that those people are prone to stress and mental health issues. So when we got talking about it, they started implementing a lot of procedures and processes to help those lone workers. And today they are fine. So it just will take a little more work awareness, talking to, and exposing them to what they need for them to buy into it. And I'm sure most of them will be good to go when we do the things right.
All right, thank you so much. We just have about 2 more questions that we can take before we go to the other aspect of this session. So, the first question is it possible to put a law in place to sue those causing mental health issues at work in place, at the workplace? Sorry.
This is a very, very interesting question. You know, when we go, like I earlier mentioned, when I talked about the acts and the laws, there are laws. And whenever there are laws, when those laws are broken, there are penalties to them. The only thing that is holding it back is implementation. It's implementation. A lot of people do not know too many things. A lot of people, let me even go beyond this. Let me even go to the Employee Compensation Act. A lot of people do not even know whether they are insured by their companies or not. A lot of people do not know that when you're insured, they do not know the processes. They do not know that when they get ill, they should be taken care of. And then the act has provision to have them covered. The same thing with this mental health act. When we go through we will see their laws. It's ignorance that makes a lot of people not know what to do. There are penalties actually to these things, but if the governments can step their foot down and then enforcement and regulatory bodies come up stronger, there will be fines. There will be fines for those things.
All right, thank you so much for that. And the last question, person wrote, this is from Solomon, Karim of Solomon. Stress leads to depression, and a person at depressed state believes that death is the best solution. At this stage, can a depressed person be brought to normal? Wow, lovely question.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I can tell you yes. I personally have, you know, when I go into this, I usually tell people, I just coach people. I just coach. A lot of people want individual coaching. They want this. A lot of people, you know, I have seen people come out from not even depressive, suicidal. I've seen people come out from suicidal states and they're fine. I had a teenager, last year, I had to, you know, coach and she's fine. I've had people who are at suicidal. You know, when you're depressive, the stage you get to after that depression is suicidal. You get suicidal. So I've seen people move from suicidal to thrive. The only thing we need to know what the root cause of the problem is. We need to get to what is bothering them and then coach them on how to manage it. When we are able to get them to manage it, it's just like a tree. When you start cutting a tree from the leaves, you're not going to get much. Maybe someone is depressed, you keep giving only drugs. Maybe after a while, the person dies off. But when a person is depressed on that depressive state and gets support, of course, there are stages where the person will be at. They can get very overwhelming. So at that point, you could just sedate them, sleep. But when they get up, you involve them in things they would like to do, get to the root cause of their problem, try to help them solve it. And when that happens, believe me, I have actually seen people move from suicidal to thriving on the spectrum of mental health. Yes.
All right, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I know that if we had our way, we would want to go on and on and on and on, but time is fast spent. So what we'll do now is to go into the presentation of the certificate. So let's see. Abanom, please, can you upload the certificate?
Sorry, Madam Cookie, I don't have the certificate. Hello, Madam Bukky, can you hear me?
I just sent it to you. All right, thank you so much. And at this point, we would like to call on Mrs. Monica Wosu to make the presentation to our very amazing presenter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bukky. Good evening, everyone, once again. It's been a great time. You'll agree with me. Ifoma, sorry, I have to call you Ifoma, not Mrs. Ifoma. It has been an absolute brilliant, thought-provoking, and insightful presentation. Trust me, it's been a well-spent evening, and I am sure everyone on this call will agree with me with the comments I'm seeing on the chat. And this is not the first time I'm listening to this presentation. And each time I listen to it, it looks as if that's the very first time I'm listening to you all over again. You have done justice to this topic, and then you've actually provoked all of us to think even deeper, not only just for the welfare of the people, even our individual selves. And we really want to say thank you for making our time to speak to us. And we want to, now before I present this certificate, I just want to quickly, based on what Ife has said, truly we need to humanize the workplace. Excuse me. We need to humanize the workplace. And talking about the spectrum and issues related to depression. It's not written on the face. We need to really become more relatable. We need to become more, human in the workplace. And it will really take that level of care, that level of attention before you can actually begin to notice this. Someone was asking questions to say that if someone has a mental health issue, how would the person be conscious enough to recognize at the workplace that he has this issue? So meaning that when you have mental health issue, people expect that you'll be acting up, right? You don't necessarily have to be acting up for us to know that you're going through mental health issues. It's not written on the faces, but then again, there are, like she has said, there are a lot of symptoms, there are a lot of things you would see that will be a pointer to that. And the only way we can notice this is, I know that particularly health and safety professionals, we are always chasing after risk assessment documents. We want it to be closed. But then again, in the midst of all that, we need to become more human and listen to people on the shop floor, particularly know what they are going through so that we can be able to relate to them in such a way they are able to see our shoulders as not loudspeakers, but shoulders that they can truly lean on. Having said all of this, I want to say thank you. And this certificate we are presenting to Mrs. Ifoma Okbara, certificate of recognition from the leadership of American Society of Safety Professionals, the WISE, the Women in Safety Excellence Arm. We are saying thank you to you for volunteering ASP Nigerian chapter as a speaker and doing justice on the topic mental health disclosure in the workplace, its challenges and supportive strategies. Truly, it was a very wonderful session, and we are really so grateful for making our time to join us. Trust me, we are going to call you next time to take us through other topic. Yes, we want to dig more from your wealth of experience. We are truly honored and to have you in our midst. Thank you so much, and we're presenting this certificate to you as a token of our appreciation to you. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Madam Monica. Thank you so much, everyone. It's my pleasure, and anytime I'm called upon, I'll gladly answer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia. Thank you, everyone on the call.
Thank you so much. I know that the time is fast spent, but just as it's getting dark, if you're in a convenient place, we would want you to just put on your cameras. For those of us that don't have our cameras on, so just put on a camera so that we could have a group photograph. And while the group photograph is going on, we'll call on our wise administrator, Dr. Cynthia, to give us her closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone, once again, it's been a very, very educative and enlightening evening for me, and I'm sure for you as well. Thank you, Mrs. Ifoma Bara. Such a good job you did on mental health today. And indeed, just like Dr. Monica said, I am even well better equipped after listening to you today. I want to thank everyone for making out time to join us, the WISE of the ASSP chapter, Nigerian chapter rather, for joining us in our webinar today. It's not by accident. It's not because you do not have works to do. It's not because your calendars aren't full, but you made time to join us. And we want to appreciate you very much for that. I want to appreciate our president, Nigerian chapter, Mr. Tolu Olubawon, and of course, our wonderful secretary. We've been working behind the wheel for us, Mr. Bumi Bankole. I want to also thank the board members, Mrs. Angela Bonwan, of course, our own beautiful Dr. Monica Nwosu. I also want to acknowledge our international members who joined us internationally, especially from the US. I mean, you guys have been so awesome. Most importantly, I want to acknowledge Mr. Anthony Crowder, who is a member of ASSP American chapter. He's a professional in AI safety training, and he has a Diamond Safety and Training Institute. Should you want to consult him, I'm sure you could find him on the chat box there. But if you cannot, do reach out to us. We'll be able to link you to him. I'm sure Mr. Anthony, we will be seeking your indulgence in the near future to come and give us some worthy knowledge sharing time. On this note, I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate you. We know that indeed it wasn't a wasted time. We all gained a lot from today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, and please tune in for us for more information on our upcoming events in the near future. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you, Dr. Cynthia. Have a wonderful night rest. Thank you. Well coordinated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Buki, for the wonderful moderation as
Nice
well.
one,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
My pleasure. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone, and enjoy your evening.
My Gigi, I cite you.
Bye, everyone.
See you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Bye.
greatly.
Putting this together is fine.
Yes, I cite you. How are you today?
Blessed and highly favored.
All right.
You.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
dear.
you.
Wow.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone, it's a pleasure having you all here. Thank you all.
Well done, Madam Professor Cynthia. Very good outing. Well done.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.
So we are signing off, and the meeting is coming to an end.